Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back through the fog of time into a world of stone walls, candlelight, and suspicion that hangs thicker than stew steam in a peasant's kitchen. You're standing in a cramped medieval dining hall, and everyone's seated murmuring prayers before the meal. You reach for your spoon with your left hand. No big deal, right? Except that it is. Heads turn. A monk coughs into his sleeve. Someone mutters something that sounds suspiciously like ungodly. You're not hurt. Not yet. But you've already made a mistake. In this world, your body language is not just noticed, it's judged. That single flick of the wrist has painted a little red target on your back, and you're going to spend the rest of the evening, maybe your life, trying to scrub it off. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in a small village somewhere in 14th century France, or maybe it's England. The accents change, but the suspicion stays the same. The local priest speaks Latin, the baker shouts in dialect, and nobody trusts a left-hander. You, unfortunately, are one. The funny part? No one's ever explained why it's so bad. They just know. There's this vague unease about you, as though your left side leaks something impure. You eat with your left hand? Strange. You carry your tools on the wrong hip? Suspicious. You sign your name and smudge the ink? That's devil's work. Or at least poor penmanship. Either way, people don't approve. You walk through town, and people step aside. It's not overt, not yet, but it's enough to raise the hairs on your neck. And in a time before mirrors were common, you've grown up noticing people's faces more than your own. That twitch of discomfort when you reach leftward, that stiff silence after you do something backwards, it all adds up. Now don't get too smug from the future. This isn't just about people being irrational. There's some history here. The Latin word for left is sinister. Yes, that's sinister. You've just inherited a full dictionary of doubt. You try to laugh it off. You make a joke at your own expense during the local feast, something about having the devil's own eating hand. A few chuckles, sure, but the blacksmith doesn't look amused. He touches the edge of his iron hammer, as if warding off something. A woman crosses herself. Later, walking back through the damp, winding alleys, you realize you're carrying your basket in your left hand. You switch, automatically, trying not to look around. No one's watching. You think, here's the uncomfortable truth. In medieval Europe, there's no privacy. Everyone knows your habits. If you pick your teeth left-handed or lead with your left foot during a dance, or, heaven forbid, make a sign of the cross backward, you're remembered. And sure, it's just gossip. But gossip in these times is a bit like kindling. It builds. And when it catches, it burns fast. You remember the boy from the next village who always carved with his left hand? Great with wood, always smiling. Then one day, gone. Some say he left. Some say the priest sent him off to a monastery. Others say darker things. But no one ever explains. Historians still argue whether left-handedness was ever officially outlawed by church or state in the Middle Ages. Some insist there were unspoken rules. Others believe the stigma was simply a cultural hangover from older superstitions. What we know is that across Europe, left-handed children were frequently corrected by force. But you're not a child anymore, are you? So you learn to adapt. You sleep on your left arm to numb it into uselessness. You practice using your right until the muscles ache and your handwriting looks like a toddler's. Still better clumsy than cursed, but despite your efforts, it slips. You reach leftward when startled. You cradle your mug left-handed when tired. You forget yourself and remember only when the silence stretches around you like a noose. Oh, and let's not forget market day. You're exchanging goods with a local vendor, goat cheese, a little sack of barley, and you hand over coins with your left hand. The woman draws back like you've slapped her. Left hands for chamber pots, she says coldly. Use the right or use nothing. You apologize. You switch, but you've already lost the sale, and worse, you've made a mark. Word travels fast, even when it limps on rumor. Oddly enough, a few animals seem to trust you more than people do. The old village cat curls up in your lap without complaint. Birds land near your left shoulder. Is it affection? Or do they just not care about human superstition? One quirky bit you overhear in the tavern, a traveler from Lombardy claims that left-handed folks can see ghosts more easily. He says his cousin was touched by spirits after using his left hand to open a church door. Of course, the locals laugh it off, but you don't, because that church door creaks just a little louder when you touch it, and your shadow on the wall, sometimes it lingers just a breath longer than your footsteps. You wake early the next morning, if you can call it waking since you barely slept. The straw mattress itched, the wind howled through the cracks in the wall, and your thoughts kept looping back to that flicker of judgment in the baker's eyes. You stretch, automatically pushing yourself up with your left hand, and then curse softly under your breath. Habit. Always habit. You shuffle to the tiny basin in the corner, splash water on your face, and fumble your tunic over your head. You reach for your belt, left-handed, then catch yourself. No, not today. Not with church bells tolling in the distance. It's Sunday, which means everyone will be watching. You've never liked Sundays. Downstairs, the stew's already bubbling. Your landlord, a stout widow with one functional eye and a fondness for pickled onions, waves you over. She doesn't trust you, not really, but she does appreciate your rent being on time. She slaps a hunk of bread into your hand and nods toward the chapel. You'd best not be late today, she mutters. They're watching for signs. Signs? You arch a brow but don't ask. Best not to pry when the soup smells good. At the church, everything is stone and shadows. Flickering candlelight makes saints look stern and judgmental. And then comes the part you dread, crossing yourself. You hesitate. Right hand. Always the right. You fumble it slightly and a boy 2 pews up notices. His head tilts. He whispers to his sister. You want to vanish into the floorboards. You listen to the sermon, a long, winding, cautionary tale about sin, deviation, and the dangers of stepping outside God's path. You're not named, but you might as well be. There's a part about Cain being marked, about goats versus sheep, and then the priest quotes something about the left path leading to destruction. It gets a small ripple of murmured agreement. To make matters worse, the man to your right, an elderly tanner with fingers like root vegetables, leans in and offers a stage whisper. Heard about a boy once wrote with his left, drowned in a well just like that. Water don't take kindly to the devil's fingers. You nod politely and shuffle a little farther down the pew. Here's the thing. The church isn't entirely to blame. It inherited much of this bias from older pagan superstitions, older still than Rome. Many cultures, not just European ones, saw the left as unclean. The hand you wiped with, the hand not used in offerings. It became the hand of ghosts, curses, and crooked things. And medieval Christianity? Well, it was very good at absorbing local beliefs and sprinkling in extra fear. There's a line in Matthew that mentions separating the sheep from the goats. Righteous on the right, cursed on the left. The church ran with that. Left became wrong, backwards, evil. One fact that survives in dusty sermons and handwritten margins. Some medieval bishops argued that the devil himself favored the left side. They pointed to Renaissance-era paintings where Lucifer slinks in from stage left. Conveniently, stage right was reserved for angels. You remember once, years ago, catching a frog with your left hand and your grandmother smacking it right out of your palm. "Don't tempt things," she hissed. "Not with that hand." You didn't understand then, you understand now. The problem is you can't undo yourself. You're not trying to be rebellious. You just are. Your fingers feel more at home with a quill in the left. Your balance is better when you lead left-footed. You could fake it, but your body always leans back toward comfort when you're not thinking. And now, walking home from church, you hear them again. Whispers. One woman says she saw you drop your bread with your left hand. Another mentions how your shadow looked strange on the chapel wall. Your landlord hears it all, nods slowly, and doesn't say a word. You try to make a joke. "If I were the devil's own, wouldn't I have better shoes?" It gets a chuckle from the blacksmith's wife, who's always been a little too fond of gossip, but even that laugh sounds nervous. The truth? People in this era fear what they don't understand. And they don't understand you. They think you're a crack in the mirror, a misaligned star, a note sung off key. And while they won't say it directly yet, you can feel it building. Still, not everyone agrees. Historians still argue whether the church's treatment of left-handers was rooted more in theology or just folk superstition run amok. There are records of priests who were left-handed and caused no scandal. There are scholars who point out that Jesus never said a word about handedness, but none of those scholars live in your village. At supper that night, you try again. You eat deliberately with your right. You pass the bowl with your right. You raise your cup with two hands just to be safe. Still, the old widow watches you, one good eye squinting, one hand stirring her stew in slow circles. You sleep that night on your side, left hand tucked beneath your pillow like a secret. The morning air bites your face as you step out, cheeks pink with the cold, and sleep still clinging to your bones. It's Monday, and that means you're due at the village schoolhouse, the one-room, smoky chamber where ink freezes in winter and lessons are taught with a stick nearly as often as with words. You shuffle through the frost with your satchel under your arm. Inside are 3 worn quills, a block of rough paper, and one tiny hope. Maybe today, your teacher won't notice which hand you write with. Spoiler alert, he will. The schoolmaster is a wiry man with a bald head, a spine like an oaken rod, and a beard that looks like it was tacked on in anger. He smells faintly of onions and ink, and he wields the ruler like a knight wields a longsword. You take your usual place in the back, beside the hearth where smoke leaks through the stones. You say nothing as your classmates giggle and settle. You dip your quill and begin to write. And the moment the left hand touches ink to paper, he's behind you. Wrong hand, he barks. No pause, no discussion. Just one word, sharp as flint. You try to switch, but you've already smudged the first line, and that's enough to summon the ruler. Crack. Across the knuckles. You hiss, more from surprise than pain, and stare down at your reddening hand. The other kids don't laugh. They're used to it. You're used to it. It happens once a week, sometimes more. You're the only one it happens to. There's no use protesting. In this time, education is not about personal growth. It's about obedience, imitation, and silence. Especially silence. The schoolmaster mutters something about twisting the devil out and makes you write the alphabet 10 times with your right hand. By the end of it, your wrist aches and your letters look like crooked fence posts. He doesn't care. To him, that's progress. Historians still argue whether such treatment was universal. Some suggest only stricter religious schools enforced right-hand use with violence, while others believe even small village teachers carried on the practice by rote. Either way, it was common enough to become expected. By midday, your fingers feel numb and splintered. You watch a boy next to you scratch his ear absent-mindedly with his left hand, and nothing happens. Why? Because no one noticed. Or maybe because he's not the lefty. That's your label. A fringe belief from the time said that left-handedness was linked to obstinacy, proof that a child refused to conform, even in the womb. Some midwives warned mothers if their babies kicked strongest with the left leg. "Watch that one," they'd whisper. "He'll be difficult." You feel difficult. Later that afternoon, the schoolmaster tells a story about a Roman general, one who always favored the right flank in battle. He says the left side was considered weaker, cursed even. To protect the left is to guard weakness, he declares, as if quoting Holy Writ. Then he looks at you. Some weakness must be corrected. Other kinds must be rooted out. The words aren't directed at you, but they land on your shoulders like a cloak made of thorns. On the way home, your hand wrapped in your sleeve to warm the bruises, you consider running away. Just for a day, maybe to the woods, or across the hill, where the sky meets the crumbling ruins of an old Roman fort. You've heard that the spirits there don't care which hand you use, but you don't. You go home, because running away gets you labeled too. You greet the widow with your right hand. You chop firewood awkwardly but obediently. You slice vegetables clumsily with your right. She nods once, not approvingly, just less suspiciously. After dinner, you practice with a quill again. Alone this time. You try to form letters with your right. The ink pools, the lines wobble, the parchment soaks where it shouldn't. You sigh, and then, just for a moment, you let your left hand take over. It's smooth, confident, effortless. The letters are clean, balanced, beautiful. You stare at them. You want to cry or laugh, or frame the parchment on the wall and declare, "Look, this is me." But you don't. You crumple the page and throw it into the fire before the widow sees. It curls, darkens, and vanishes with a final flash. Another fact? Left-handed scribes existed in the Middle Ages, but their work often went unsigned, or else their quirks were erased by later editors. Some researchers speculate that even illuminated manuscripts, those ornate Bibles and scrolls, might have hidden left-handed flourishes, but no one can prove it. That's the thing about you, isn't it? Your presence is always evidence, but your gifts, they're invisible. That night you lie in bed, nursing your fingers and watching the moonlight filter through the shutters. You try to pray, but even the sign of the cross feels like a trap. So you whisper instead, "Let me keep my hand, just let me keep it." No reply comes, only the wind. It doesn't care which side it blows from. The next few days pass in a blur of wood smoke, blisters, and the quiet rituals of village life. You chop kindling, muck out the livestock stall, and scrape frost from the window each morning, watching breath steam from your nose like a dragon that gave up roaring. You do it all right-handed, mostly. But it doesn't stop the sideways looks. It doesn't stop the feeling of being watched. You've become the village curiosity, the quiet strangeness tucked among the otherwise obedient bodies. The kindling still splits clean when you strike it with your left, but you only do that when no one's around. Your hands are starting to feel like liars. Then one damp afternoon you get summoned. It's not official. A knock on the door, a message passed quietly from the miller's daughter. "The bailiff wants to see you," she says, not unkindly. "Bring your work apron." You frown but obey. The bailiff is the village's judge, jury, and occasional tax collector. His home is larger than most, with glazed windows and a dog that never stops growling. He ushers you into his study, a cramped room full of scrolls, cracked maps, and a smell halfway between beeswax and sweaty parchment. "You're good with your hands," he says, eyeing you like a pot he might or might not buy. "That carving on the chapel pew, it was yours, wasn't it?" You nod. It was a side project. Quiet, intricate, done in the evenings when your fingers ached for something graceful. You didn't sign it, of course. Just left it there like a whisper. He leans forward. "Tell me, did you use the proper hand?" Your mouth goes dry. "What do you mean, sir?" He lifts an eyebrow. "Don't be clever. I've heard things." Whispers. You hesitate, then lie. "Of course, my right." It's not the first lie you've told to keep your left hand safe. It won't be the last. "Good," the bailiff grunts. "Keep it that way. You're not from noble blood. You don't get exceptions. That's when it really hits you. The hierarchy isn't just about land or coin. It's about the rules you can afford to break. If you were a knight or a lord's son, maybe your quirks would be tolerated, maybe even called eccentric. But you're not. You're replaceable. Here's a little linguistic tidbit you might enjoy. The Latin word sinister originally just meant left, but as time passed, it evolved to mean unlucky and eventually evil. Meanwhile, dexter, the word for right, gave us dexterity, a compliment. Right is good, left is suspicious. Even the language was stacked against you. Historians still argue whether these associations arose from practical bias, most people being right-handed, or whether ancient religious and astrological systems helped shape them. Some say the left side was considered female and therefore weaker. Others believe it was linked to lunar cycles and shadow. Either way, you're stuck with the consequences. Back in the bailiff's study, he dismisses you with a grunt. "If I hear different," he says, tapping a finger on his desk, "we'll have another conversation." You bow low, too low, your neck creaks, but you don't speak. Outside, you exhale so hard you cough. The air is thick with mist and the scent of rotting apples. Someone left a basket to spoil near the well. Flies buzz lazily. And in that moment you wonder, would it be easier If you actually were sinister, if they already believe it, why not live it? Why not lean into the legend? But you don't, because you don't want to be feared. You just want to be. That night you sit by the hearth with a blunt knife and a scrap of soft wood. You carve a little fox. Sly, grinning, dancing across the grain. You use your left hand. It's quiet, honest work. You finish the fox and tuck it into the woodpile. A secret. Maybe someone will find it. Maybe not. The next morning you wake to find your work apron missing. You search the whole room, the whole cottage. Nothing. At breakfast, the widow doesn't mention it. She eats slowly, noisily, eyes never quite meeting yours. Her lips twitch slightly when you reach for the salt with your left hand. The next few days pass in a blur of wood smoke, blisters, and the quiet rituals of village life. You chop kindling, muck out the livestock stall, and scrape frost from the window each morning, watching breath steam from your nose like a dragon that gave up roaring. You do it all right-handed, mostly, but it doesn't stop the sideways looks. It doesn't stop the feeling of being watched. You've become the village curiosity, the quiet strangeness tucked among the otherwise obedient bodies. The kindling still splits clean when you strike it with your left, but you only do that when no one's around. Your hands are starting to feel like liars. Then one damp afternoon, you get summoned. It's not official. A knock on the door, a message passed quietly from the miller's daughter. "The bailiff wants to see you," she says, not unkindly. "Bring your work apron." You frown but obey. The bailiff is the village's judge, jury, and occasional tax collector. His home is larger than most, with glazed windows and a dog that never stops growling. He ushers you into his study, a cramped room full of scrolls, cracked maps, and a smell halfway between beeswax and sweaty parchment. "You're good with your hands," he says, eyeing you like a pot he might or might not buy. "That carving on the chapel pew, it was yours, wasn't it?" You nod. It was a side project. Quiet, intricate, done in the evenings when your fingers ached for something graceful. You didn't sign it, of course, just left it there like a whisper. He leans forward. "Tell me, did you use the proper hand?" Your mouth goes dry. "What do you mean, sir?" He lifts an eyebrow. "Don't be clever. I've heard things." Whispers. You hesitate, then lie. "Of course, my right." It's not the first lie you've told to keep your left hand safe. It won't be the last. "Good," the bailiff grunts. "Keep it that way. You're not from noble blood. You don't get exceptions. That's when it really hits you. The hierarchy isn't just about land or coin. It's about the rules you can afford to break. If you were a knight or a lord's son, maybe your quirks would be tolerated, maybe even called eccentric. But you're not. You're replaceable. Here's a little linguistic tidbit you might enjoy. The Latin word sinister originally just meant left. But as time passed, it evolved to mean unlucky and eventually evil. Meanwhile, dexter, the word for right, gave us dexterity, a compliment. Right is good, left is suspicious. Even the language was stacked against you. Historians still argue whether these associations arose from practical bias, most people being right-handed, or whether ancient religious and astrological systems helped to shape them. Some say the left side was considered female and therefore weaker. Others believe it was linked to lunar cycles and shadow. Either way, you're stuck with the consequences. Back in the bailiff's study, he dismisses you with a grunt. "If I hear different," he says, tapping a finger on his desk, "we'll have another conversation." You bow low, too low, your neck creaks, but you don't speak. Outside, you exhale so hard you cough. The air is thick with mist and the scent of rotting apples. Someone left a basket to spoil near the well. Flies buzz lazily, and in that moment you wonder, would it be easier if you actually were sinister? If they already believe it, why not live it? Why not lean into the legend? But you don't, because you don't want to be feared, you just want to be. That night you sit by the hearth with a blunt knife and a scrap of softwood. You carve a little fox, sly, grinning, dancing across the grain. You use your left hand. It's quiet, honest work. You finish the fox and tuck it into the woodpile. A secret. Maybe someone will find it. Maybe not. The next morning you wake to find your work apron missing. You search the whole room, the whole cottage. Nothing. At breakfast, the widow doesn't mention it. She eats slowly, noisily, eyes never quite meeting yours. Her lips twitch slightly when you reach for the salt. With your left hand, it's market day again, and the square smells like a stew of everything. Fresh herbs, sheep dung, sweat, roasted onions, and whatever fish didn't quite make it to the bucket in time. You tug your hood a little lower and weave through the crowd, keeping your hands at your sides like they're guilty of something. You're here to pick up nails for the fence, maybe a wedge of cheese if there's coin left over. But really, you're watching. Watching how people move, how they gesture, how no one uses their left hand when passing goods. The right hand is for trading. The left is for other things. And then you spot it. A boy, maybe 10, handing his mother a plum with his left hand. She smacks it right out of his palm. "Do not touch food with that hand," she hisses. The boy looks confused, maybe a little hurt, and switches obediently. You see yourself in him, a ghost version. Maybe you always have. It isn't just social, it's practical too. Most of the market tools, scales, shears, grinders, are designed for right-handed use. It's awkward, fumbling, trying to flip them around. You tried once with a grain grinder and nearly crushed your thumb. Guilds, especially, are strict. Carpentry, smithing, tailoring, crafts that hold the village together. They don't tolerate much deviation. Left-handed apprentices are often told to fix it or leave. The tools are expensive. The rules are older than the town charter. There's no room for custom comfort. You once asked the cooper, who makes the barrels, if anyone ever used their left hand for hoop setting. He just snorted. If they did, the barrels would roll backward. You're not even sure that makes sense. Historians still argue whether guild bans on left-handedness were formal rules or just enforced by culture. Some documents mention corrections for deviant techniques. Others don't mention handedness at all, likely because it wasn't even considered worth recording. That silence speaks volumes. You pass a stall selling quills and ink. The seller, a thin man with ink-stained fingers, leans over and hisses conspiratorially, "Got a cousin Lefty, writes letters for rich folk. Only at night, though." "Why at night?" you ask, genuinely curious. The man shrugs. "Ink smudges in the day. Moon's more forgiving." You blink. You weren't expecting poetry. He winks, then shouts at a child for trying to pet a goose. Further along, you spot the blacksmith. He's pounding away as usual, sparks flying like angry stars. But when he lifts the hammer for a moment to wipe sweat, you notice something. He switches hands. Not just once, not just idly. It's fluid. Practiced. He uses both like it's nothing. He catches your stare and frowns. "Something wrong?" You shake your head. "No, sir, just watching." He eyes you for a moment. Watch less, swing more, and then he turns back to the forge like the moment didn't happen. But it did. Later you return to the widow's cottage, goods in hand, fingers raw from carrying too much at an odd angle. You used your right hand all day, and it shows. blisters, cramping, a dull ache that makes you feel like you've lived twice your age. As you slice the bread that evening, with your left hand finally, thankfully, you wonder about that blacksmith. Does he hide it? Was he trained to hide it? Or did he just get lucky? Strong enough, vital enough to escape judgment? You chew slowly, thinking, in a world so rigid. Maybe ambidextrous people are the real rebels. Before sleep, you scribble a note on scrap parchment. A simple one. Just the word both. You don't know what it means yet, but it feels like a seed. You tuck it into your satchel and go to bed with your left hand resting softly over your chest, like a secret kept warm. The clouds hang low this morning, fat with rain and brooding like the village priest after someone skips mass. You can smell the storm before it arrives, a sour tang in the air, a heaviness that settles into your sleeves and behind your eyes. You're on your way to fetch firewood from the forest's edge, trying to beat the weather. As you pass the chapel, the door creaks open and someone calls your name. It's Sister Maud. You don't dislike Sister Maud. She's severe, thin as a broom handle, and wears a cross so large it looks like it's anchoring her to the earth. But she's also the one who bandaged your wrist after a fall last winter. She's got that unsettling nun quality of seeing right through you, though, and that makes you nervous. She beckons you in. The air inside is incense and stone and dust. Always dust. She motions for you to sit. I've been hearing, she begins, and your stomach drops. Hearing what? Her eyes narrow. That you use your left hand too freely? That you do so even in church? You try to explain. It's habit. It's not meant as rebellion, but she raises a finger. In the scriptures, she intones, those who stray from the path are brought back through correction. You must ask yourself, are you straying? Or are you hiding from the correction? You sit there, unsure whether to answer or nod, or just melt into the pew. She continues, more gently now. When a child walks crooked, we give them a staff. When a mind wanders, we give them prayer. And when a hand betrays them, she lets the silence finish the sentence. You ask quietly, but what if it's just the hand I was given? For a flicker of a moment she softens. Her mouth twists, not unkindly. Then perhaps it is the world that's crooked? You blink. Did she just say that? But then she rises, smooths her habit, and blesses you. Right hand raised, of course. You mumble thanks and stumble out into the rain. Raindrops pelt your head like thrown pebbles as you trudge into the woods. The firewood is soaked, but you gather what you can, twisting rope around the bundle. Your left hand knots it with muscle memory. Efficient, quiet, wrong. You pause and look around. The trees don't seem to mind. Out here you can use whichever hand you want. Out here the rules don't matter. Out here you can be left-handed and not feel lesser. You stack your bundle and sit on a fallen log for a moment, letting the drizzle paint your face. You remember a story Sister Maud once told in a sermon about the devil hiding in small places, in soup pots, in knotted cords, in the left-hand shadows of the altar. At the time it sounded ridiculous. Now you wonder if she meant it more symbolically, or maybe not. Historians still argue whether the church's obsession with right and left was ever officially codified. Some believe it stemmed from early attempts to align ritual with cosmic order. The sun rises on the right, sets on the left. Others think it was simply a human preference, magnified by fear. One fringe belief from the period that witches couldn't kneel without revealing their left side. Some village priests watched how congregants bent at the knee. If they leaned the wrong way, well, let's just say it didn't end with a handshake. That thought sticks with you as you return to the village. Sack of firewood bouncing against your hip. You feel damp, heavy, thoughtful. At home, the widow eyes the bundle. Tied with the wrong hand again, she mutters. You open your mouth, close it, and say instead, "It held." She says nothing more, just starts chopping turnips. That night you can't sleep. The wind howls like it's forgotten its own name, and your mind loops like a cracked song. You sit by the embers and sketch in the ash with your left index finger. A tree, a fox, a crooked star. You don't know what any of it means, but your hand seems to. By the time midsummer arrives, the village is sticky with sweat and suspicion. The long days mean longer eyes on you. No fog to hide behind. No early darkness to give you shelter. Your left hand, always trying to help, becomes your enemy by accident. It twitches, it stirs, it lifts things just a moment too fast. Then one afternoon it happens. You're helping at the chapel festival. Everyone does, even the priest eyes a little longer than usual. There's food to carry, banners to raise, straw to scatter. You're in charge of hanging a painted cloth above the chapel door, a lovely thing of saints and swords and stars. You're halfway up the ladder threading rope when someone shouts, not in joy. Your left hand is aloft, tying a knot in full view of the entire village. And someone gasps like you've pulled a snake out of your sleeve. You glance down. A dozen eyes locked on your hand, the rope, the gesture, and then the worst voice possible speaks. The priest's. With that hand, he says softly but carrying like thunder. The ladder creaks. Your ears burn. It's just tying a knot, you mumble. He steps forward. Do you think holy work should be done with a hand favored by sorcery? By witches? That word. It's not the first time it's been used in the village, but never toward you. Not allowed. You climb down slowly, too slowly. Each step feels like walking backward into a trap. The priest gestures for you to hold out your hands. Right first, then left. He examines them as if he can see something wrong. You half expect your skin to darken, your fingers to hiss like snakes. He frowns. This hand leads you toward pride, he says. It works without permission. You don't know what to say, so you say nothing. Silence has become your most faithful companion. It's decided, without much discussion, that you'll fast for 2 days as penance. You'll also be banned from handling any tools in the chapel for the remainder of the summer. Just like that, your usefulness is revoked. Back home, the widow doesn't look up as you enter. I warned you, she mutters into her soup. You sit too numb to argue. That night in bed, you stare at your left hand. You flex the fingers, watching the moonlight play across your knuckles. It's a good hand, strong, steady, kind even when you cradle kittens or stroke the heads of passing goats. It is not wicked, but try telling that to a world terrified of asymmetry. There's a peculiar medieval belief you recall, one whispered by the cobbler's niece when you were children, that the devil marks his followers on their sword arm. And for most, that's the right. But if you were left-handed, well, the mark shifts, doesn't it? Some said it glowed under moonlight. Others claimed it could be seen only when the person told a lie. You examine your arm. There is no mark, just freckles and a scratch from a berry bush. Historians still argue whether such folk tales were truly believed or simply passed around to scare children and adults who didn't fit. But they did appear in trial records. They showed up in sermons, and they showed up in punishments. And now they show up in you. You begin to dream of your hand, just your hand, wandering through the village like a disobedient dog, causing mischief, tying knots in priestly robes, flipping coins the wrong way. It's not malicious, just tired of pretending. When you wake, the hand is back, sleeping quietly on your chest like it never left. Morning breaks with golden beams and bird song, but your mood is gray as ever. After the chapel incident, people look at you differently, not with hostility exactly, but with a careful kind of caution, like you're a jug with a crack no one wants to mention. You trudge to the scriptorium just outside town, a small stone building tucked near the stream. It's where the village keeps records, copied texts, and, most importantly, a few monks who don't ask too many questions. You've been assigned to help Brother Arnulf, the town's only literate man with patience for others. He's nearing 80, smells like dusty wool, and wears spectacles so thick you're not sure how much he actually sees. Still, it's quiet work, peaceful, until, of course, you pick up the quill, left hand. You don't think about it. You're too caught up in the rhythm, the way the ink flows, the way the parchment sighs when touched just right. You write 3 lines before Brother Arnulf clears his throat. You freeze. Is this the moment? Another scolding? Another assignment lost? But instead, he simply says, "Your letters lean leftward, like a tree growing away from wind." You wait, nothing else follows. "That's bad?" you ask. He shrugs. "It's yours." The monks of Lindisfarne once wrote upside down to keep the ink from spilling. No one liked it, but it worked. You exhale slowly, heart still thumping. "Just don't smudge," he adds. And that's the rub. Writing with the left hand, especially with a right-to-left script, smears ink like butter on hot bread. Medieval scribes spent years learning posture, angles, and wrist turns to avoid it. You do your best, holding your hand above the line like a chicken foot on stilts. Still, a blot appears. Brother Arnulf sighs but says nothing. You suspect he's seen worse. Monasteries, oddly enough, could be a haven for left-handers. Not safe exactly, but quieter, more forgiving. There are even a few records, very few, of monks praised for their unique lettering style, though most went unnamed. Their work mattered more than their methods. One quirky theory floating in fringe history circles claims that some left-handed monks were intentionally hidden, their identities masked because their talent was needed, but their method feared. A secret cabal of lefty calligraphers? Probably not. But still, you wonder. After hours of copying, you take a break and wander outside, stretching your fingers in the sun. The quill stained your thumb black again, your left thumb. Of course, you crouch by the stream, watching it ripple over stones like liquid glass. You try dipping your right hand in. Feels fine. Then your left. The water feels colder. You shake your head, laughing quietly at yourself. Superstition can rot your brain if you let it. Back inside, Brother Arnulf has dozed off, quill still twitching in his fingers. You take the parchment and finish the last passage. Careful, gentle, left-handed. When he wakes, he peers over the work and nods once. "No blot," he says. You allow yourself a sliver of pride. On the way home, you pass 2 boys. drawing in the dirt with sticks. One uses his right hand, the other the left. They don't seem to care. You smile and keep walking. Later at supper, the widow comments on the ink stains. Left again, wasn't it? You look at her, not defiant, just steady. It's the only hand that makes the words come out right. She grunts and goes back to chewing. Doesn't press the matter. Progress, maybe. That night, you write your name 3 times on a spare scrap. Once with your left, once with your right, once with both together. The left is smooth. The right is clumsy. The last one, strange, crooked, but oddly beautiful. You're at supper with the widow and her cousin, an older woman with no teeth and too many opinions. She eats slowly, pausing often to launch suspicious glances in your direction, like she's inspecting a stew for bones. You're careful tonight. Right hand only. You pass the salt. Right-handed. You chew and nod when spoken to. You even manage to cut a piece of boiled parsnip with the grace of someone faking it well. But then, instinctively, you wipe your mouth with your left. A tiny thing, a nothing thing. The cousin freezes mid-chew. The widow sighs, deeply. The cousin sets down her spoon, turns to you and says, "You know what they say, don't you? Pass food with your left hand, and you'll invite death to the table." You blink. "I thought that was just salt." She leans in, breath thick with garlic and old judgment. Salt, meat, bread, spoons, anything. It's the gesture, the intention. She taps her temple. Left hand's the devil's whisper. You mutter, "Then I must be full of secrets." It's too quick, too sharp. The widow scowls. The cousin gasps like a fish pulled from water. But no one speaks again for a while. There's something weirdly powerful about table manners in medieval culture. They aren't just etiquette, they're morality, social order disguised as mealtime ritual. And the left hand? It's almost always the wrong one. There's a reason guests were seated on the host's right, because trust came with the assumption they'd eat, fight, and reach with their dominant, good hand. The left side was reserved for those you didn't mind watching closely. You remember one monk explaining it this way: "The Lord seats his favorites on the right hand." He never said what happened to the rest. Historians still argue how deep the superstition ran. Some claim it was mostly rural, peasant folklore exaggerated over generations. Others say the nobility were even more obsessed with it, using left-handed gestures as political slights in court. One noble, legend says, handed a goblet with his left hand during a feast and caused a duel. There's another peculiar belief that passing food or coin with the left would curse the transaction. You once gave a boy a copper penny left-handed and he burst into tears. No one explained why, he just knew. You finish supper in silence, hands folded politely in your lap. Both hands. Later you take a walk, an excuse really, to shake off the evening's tension. The moon is nearly full, casting silver light across the fields. You step softly through damp grass, hands in your pockets. Safe. You spot an owl overhead. It swoops once, then lands on a fence post, left side facing you. You half joke to yourself, guess even owls can be wrong-handed. But the owl blinks slowly, tilts its head, and doesn't fly off. It just watches you. You feel a strange connection. You lift your left hand, slowly, like offering a greeting. The owl turns away, not alarmed, not judgmental, just finished. It flaps off into the night. Back at the cottage, you find a bundle left at the door. It's a small sack of potatoes, a strip of dried apple, and a note. Use whatever hand you like. You helped my boy with letters. No name, just that. You smile. Not everyone thinks your left hand is cursed. Just most people. You wake the next morning to birdsong and the faint sound of someone arguing with a goat. Normal village things, but something feels different. You can't quite place it. Maybe it's the warmth in your chest, left from last night's anonymous gift. Maybe it's that you slept with your left hand beneath your cheek, peacefully, unpunished, as you step outside. A strange calm settles. You walk past the chapel, past the smithy, down the lane where wildflowers grow stubbornly in the cart ruts. You're not hiding your hands today. You're on your way to the cottage of old Merle, the village's semi-official healer, herb witch, and gossip magnet. Her knees creak louder than her door hinges, and her tea always smells suspiciously of onions. But she knows things, especially about odd folk, like you. She opens the door before you knock. Of course she does. Took you long enough, she rasps. Get in. You step into a room filled with dried herbs, bundles of roots, and the quiet creak of old wood under old secrets. I need help sorting foxglove, she says. Delicate work. You nod and sit across from her at a low table. She watches as you pick up the first sprig with your left hand. Nimble, precise. Ha, she says. I knew it. You freeze. She cackles. Oh, relax, child. I like left-handers. Means you see the world the tilted way. That's useful for healing. And hexing. You blink. I'm joking, she adds with a grin. Mostly. You both work in silence for a while. The air smells like lavender and crushed nettle. You begin to relax. Did you know, she says suddenly, there's a saint who wrote with both hands at once? No. Saint Ambidextrous, she says. You raise an eyebrow. That's not real, you say. She shrugs. But the idea is duality, balance, right and left, moon and sun. You think the world spins because it's proper? No, it spins because it's uneven. You don't fully understand, but it comforts you anyway. There were exceptions, quiet, hidden ones, saints, scribes, artisans who were left-handed and survived it, sometimes even thrived. Though rarely celebrated for their difference, they left marks, curious illustrations in margins, mirrored inscriptions, musical notation drawn from the wrong side. Historians still debate whether these rare cases were protected by power or simply clever enough to avoid attention. Some suggest they were valued precisely because they were unusual. Left-handed calligraphers tasked with secret codes, backward texts, or healing practices others wouldn't dare try. Merle pours you some tea. It smells earthy and oddly sweet. I watch people, she says, and I see in you not a curse, just someone walking sideways while the rest march forward. That's not wicked. It's old. Older than the church. Older than the village. You sip. It's not bad. A bit like peppermint that forgot its name. Left-handers used to be called wiseways, she continues. Not in books, in bones, in stories that predate parchment. You like that, wiseways. As you leave, she hands you a pouch of dried herbs. For pain, she says. Not for your hand. For the ache of being different. You nod and thank her. Back on the path, you feel lighter, like you've been seen properly, maybe for the first time. At home, you add her herbs to the stew. The widow tastes it and says nothing, which is the highest praise she gives. That night you light a candle and write again. This time you don't hide it. You don't tense, you just write. Your hand moves like it always has, leftward, fluid, faithful. You sign your name, then beneath it, just for yourself, you add a little note, wise ways walk quiet. You blow out the candle and sleep deeply. The next day brings a different kind of challenge, one that smells faintly of vinegar and boiled leeks. You've been summoned, this time not by the bailiff or the priest, but by the local physician. He's a thin, nervous man with fingers that twitch when he's thinking, which is often. They say he studied in a distant town, somewhere with stone libraries and walls that didn't leak in spring. You step into his cramped cottage, ducking beneath hanging bundles of dried thistle and rosemary. He gestures toward a stool without looking up from his notes. Sit. You do? I've been asked to assess, he says vaguely. Assess what? He finally meets your eyes. Whether your affliction is natural or acquired, whether it might be corrected. You try not to clench your fists. My hand? He doesn't answer. Instead, he begins his inspection. He examines your fingers, presses your palms, asks you to flex, grip, pinch. He hums thoughtfully. Then he taps your elbow with a small wooden mallet. It makes you twitch. Reflexive, he notes. Nothing sinister in the nerves. You almost laugh. Nothing sinister, he says, with the gravest tone. Then comes the truly medieval part. He pulls out a jar of leeches. You blink. Is that necessary? He tilts his head. It's a humoral imbalance. Left-handedness is often linked to an excess of cold, moist humors, particularly black bile. If we reduce the excess, we might see improvement. Improvement, you repeat, like tasting a sour cherry. He attaches a leash to your forearm. It wriggles, then settles in. You watch it fill like a water skin. Your stomach flips. Medieval medicine often worked this way, equal parts theory and guesswork. The four humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, were believed to govern not just health, but personality, even-handedness. Too much black bile? You were melancholic. Too much yellow bile? Probably irritable. Too much left hand? Clearly an imbalance needing leeches. Historians still argue whether left-handedness was ever truly considered a diagnosable medical issue or just lumped in with other oddities to be treated by default. But treatments did happen. From leeching to binding the arm at night to the use of charms or poultices. After 2 leeches and a smelly poultice of sage and mashed onion tied to your wrist with rough linen, the physician releases you. Return in a fortnight, he says. We'll check for progress. You nod even though you have no intention of coming back. Outside, your arm stings, not from the bite, but from the idea that your body is seen as wrong. You pass a merchant's cart on your way back, where a woman is shouting prices for pears and cloth scraps. She waves with her left hand. You stop. She notices. Something wrong? She says. No, you say. You just waved with that hand. She looks at it, shrugs. It's the one I've got. Grew up on a ship. No one on deck cares what hand you use, as long as you don't drop the ropes. You nod slowly. Sensible. She grins. Funny, isn't it? How many rules people make once they're stuck on land. That sticks with you. That night, as you remove the linen wrap from your wrist, you think about ships, about freedom, about places where your hands are tools, not warnings. You write a note to yourself in the dark. No more leeches. You tuck it beneath your pillow and sleep with both hands curled beneath your chin. Unashamed, it's harvest time now, and everything smells of straw, sweat, and sun-baked dirt. The fields stretch gold and generous beneath a sky too bright to look at for long. The village moves in rhythm, cut, bind, carry, stack, each body a cog in a great creaking wheel. And you, of course, must work like the rest. You're handed a sickle, curved iron, bone handle, heavy in all the wrong places, made, like everything else, for the right hand. You try, you really try. You fumble your grip. The angle is wrong. You twist your wrist, and the blade catches oddly in the stalks. You adjust. Again, still wrong. Someone laughs. You hear the comment before you even see who says it. Maybe if you weren't cursed in the wrist, we'd have the wheat in by supper. You don't look up, you just switch hands. And suddenly the cut is clean. The sound of blade through stalk is oddly satisfying, like tearing paper you meant to tear. A few passers-by notice. One frowns. One whispers. But the wheat falls. It's the first time in weeks you feel useful. You cut quietly, efficiently. You move through the field like a shadow. When blisters form, you ignore them. When sweat blinds you, you keep slicing. Then someone taps your shoulder. It's the overseer. Big arms, soft voice, usually fair. You're fast, he says. Too fast. You're cutting the wrong way. You pause. Want me to cut slower? You ask. He narrows his eyes. I want you to cut properly. He hands you a second sickle, right-handed again. The weight shifts wrong in your fingers. You nod. You don't argue, but you cut slower, not because you're less skilled, but because you're correcting yourself again. That night your hands are raw. Both of them. But one aches with effort, the other with resentment. Later, you sit near the fire and remember what Merle said. How the world isn't proper, but crooked. You wonder how much time you've spent correcting what was never broken. There's a story you once overheard at a feast. A wandering bard told of a foreign land where the left hand was used for blessing, for writing spells, for sacred dance. You don't know if the place was real. Maybe it doesn't matter. Historians still debate whether Europe's obsession with right-handedness was an anomaly. Some cultures, past and present, have embraced ambidexterity or even favored the left. But in medieval Europe, you were out of luck. One curious belief from the fringes of French rural culture. It was said a truly gifted healer could touch wounds only with the left hand, or risk reversing the cure. Merle would have liked that one. After the fire dims, you carve another figure from wood. This time it's a bird, wings half open, head tilted as if listening. You use your left hand the whole time. You tuck the carving under the widow's chair before bed. No one needs to know. Not yet. You dream of a harvest field where everyone swings left. No one watches. No one cares. The wheat falls like golden rain. A storm rolls in just before dawn. Rain drumming on the roof like impatient fingers. Wind howling through shutters that were never built for honesty. You lie awake, blinking into the darkness, listening to it all. It feels like the world is being scrubbed. You rise early, dress slowly, wrap your cloak tightly, and head into the morning gray. You have a task today. Deliver a message to the manor house, not a common request. The manor is where the gentry live, the ones with wax seals, real cutlery, and opinions about how peasants should behave. You trudge the muddy path with care. A wrong step here means a tumble into the ditch, and no one wants to arrive at the Lord's door looking like a soup ingredient. When you get there, the steward meets you. A narrow man with long fingers and a voice like rain on slate. He eyes the folded letter in your hand. You start to pass it without thinking with your left. He draws back.
The right, if you please. You correct quickly. Apologize. He snatches the message and disappears into the hall.
You wait on a stone bench, wet and awkward. A serving girl passes with a tray and offers a tight smile. She sees your stained hands and eyes your cloak. You're the left-handed one, she says softly.
You brace yourself, but she just adds, I am too.
You blink. She lifts her left hand and waggles her fingers. Can't write, but I sew with it. Hide it when I can. She glances around. They don't know, or they pretend not to. You share a moment of quiet recognition, a tiny rebellion wrapped in a smile.
The steward returns, hands you a sealed reply, no words, just a grunt, and sends you off.
Back outside, the rain has eased. You walk home slowly, savoring the cool dampness and the strange glow of that tiny conversation. You're not the only one. Maybe you never were.
At the village, someone has found your carving, the little bird. It's been moved to the windowsill of the chapel. No one claims it. No one removes it. You suspect that's a kind of permission? Later, while helping mend a broken fence, you use your left hand openly. Someone notices, says nothing.
The silence feels different now. Less like judgment. More like allowance.
You pass the market and overhear two women arguing about a missing pie. One says she saw a crooked-handed boy near the cottage. The other replies, that doesn't mean anything. Half the village has crooked hands these days. You almost laugh. That night Merle visits unannounced. She brings onion soup and a handful of poppy seeds. Sprinkle these on your pillow, she says. They'll soften your dreams. You thank her, and as she leaves, she pauses. You know, she says, some folks believe the left hand isn't cursed. It's just closer to the heart. She taps her chest twice, then vanishes into the night like a cat-shaped idea.
Historians still argue whether left-handed people ever truly found solidarity in their difference back then. But you're starting to feel like the answer is yes. Quietly, in nods, in kindnesses, in soup. You sleep that night with your left hand tucked under your cheek, heart humming gently just beneath it. The year begins to turn. The fields brown, the trees whisper like tired old men, and the geese fly overhead in orderly chaos, ignoring human superstition altogether. You walk the same muddy paths, but something's shifted. Less in the village, more in you. You've stopped hiding your left hand. Not all the time. Not in the chapel, not when the priest's watching. But you no longer flinch when it acts on instinct. You no longer punish it for doing what it was made to do. People notice. Some whisper, some frown, and some nod. Small nods. Almost invisible. One morning, while hauling sacks of barley, the blacksmith calls over. You ever think about taking up a trade? He asks. You pause mid-sack. Me? Your hands know weight and balance. He grunts. Doesn't matter which hand, long as you're useful. You blink. You take a left-hander? He grins. I'm not hiring a hand, I'm hiring a person. It's the closest thing to a compliment you've heard all year. You start spending evenings at his forge, just watching at first. How he works the bellows, how he strikes iron, how his tools aren't exactly standard. A few are slightly curved. A few, suspiciously, seem to favor the left. You don't ask, he doesn't explain. But one night he hands you a small hammer and says, try. You do. Your left hand lifts it naturally. The rhythm is strange, but your strikes are clean. Sparks jump like startled fireflies. You'll make things, he says, and that's that. Weeks pass. Your arms grow stronger. Your hands grow confident. The village still has its rules, but they seem a little softer now. Maybe because people are tired. Maybe because harvest was good. Or maybe because they've finally realized that being left doesn't mean being wrong. You help at the market, carve wooden toys for children, and write a poem in the dirt with your finger during a slow afternoon. A child watches, then copies you. With her left hand, you wink.
At supper one night, the widow says, "You stir stew better with your cursed hand."
You smile. It's not cursed. It's just older than the rest of me.
She snorts. Long as it doesn't burn the pot, that's her way of saying fine.
And then, on the final Sunday before frost, something quiet happens.
During Mass, the priest fumbles a page. You rise instinctively to help. You hand it back with your left. He sees. He hesitates. And then he nods, just once.
It's not a blessing. It's not forgiveness. But it's an acknowledgement. That's all you ever wanted. Later you find yourself standing by the chapel door. The painted cloth still hangs above it, though faded now. You trace the rope with your fingers, left ones, and feel no guilt.
You think about all the people before you who hid their left hands, bound them, bruised them, trained them into silence.
You think about those who didn't. You whisper a small thank you to no one in particular. Then you walk home, hands swinging free at your sides. The wind down begins slowly, like the embers of a fire that know their work is almost done. You sit by your window and listen to the hush of falling leaves. The sky is streaked with stars, the kind that shimmer like the eyes of people who finally understand something about themselves. Your left hand rests quietly on the table. Still, whole, forgiven. Outside, a dog barks once, then curls into sleep. A candle gutters low. Your eyes begin to blur at the edges. The world is softer now, rounder, like an old quilt folded over a tired heart. You think about the people who feared your hand and the few who accepted it. You think about the path it took to get here. Every scolding, every whisper, every small kindness folded into your bones like secret prayers.
You are not cursed. You are not broken. You are just left. And that's enough. Now let your breathing slow. Let the world tilt on its axis, leftward just a little. Let your dreams be light.